Brooks University as a senior lecturer in a business school. Now the topic is negotiating the idea of university, promoting research within a colonial context. Calcutta University, 1880 to 1930. Please, Serja.
Right. Can I share my screen?
Of course, please.
Okay, I'll go for it. Oops.
Yes.
You can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can. Very well, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I thank Kevin for inviting me to present at this interesting and important conference. The picture on the screen is that of University College of Science and Technology, Calcutta University. It was established in 1914 by Ashutosh Mukherjee, the then Vice Chancellor of the university, and it was here postgraduate teaching and research took roots in the Indian higher education system. And the striking thing was that it was unaided financially by the colonial government. This was a native affair, spearheaded by Ashutosh Mukherjee, aided by generous endowments from native businessmen, lawyers, landowners. How this happened is the subject matter of this talk. Important to note in the context of this conference, which is exploring internationalization of higher education over time, that there is an intellectual and global history of the idea of a university. So maybe that's a good place to start the narrative. The idea of a university has evolved over time. Historians typically refer to John Henry Newman's classic treatise, The Idea of a University, as the starting point of any discussion on the theme. Reading today, Newman's essay appears to be quite dated, advocating a vision of the university few here would be able to relate to. Under Newman's scheme, universities should just stick to teaching. They are to be pure teaching institutions, delivering education in classics and liberal arts. All advancement of knowledge, science, and technology should be carried out by entities outside of the university system. By the time Newman penned the celebrated article in the 1850s, his views were already quite antiquated. The old conservative Oxbridge model that was close to Newman's ideal was threatened by the more enlightened Scottish universities and the newly established University College London. These universities, with their progressive curriculum, which incorporated new disciplines from science and technology, were attracting students at such high numbers that Oxford and Cambridge started suffering from existential angst. The modern university model that we are most familiar with, the one that combines teaching and research, can be traced to University of Berlin, established in 1809. And I think the previous speakers also referred to the German model. University Berlin was renamed as Humboldt University of Berlin in 1949, acknowledging the huge impact of Wilhelm von Humboldt in its conception. Humboldt was a privy councillor in the Prussian Interior Ministry, and he was instrumental in convincing King Frederick William III to set up the university, which saw the union of teaching and research combined with university autonomy from state interference. What we now refer to the Humboldtian university model has two defining characteristics. A, Academics are expected to carry out both teaching and research. And B, the university has autonomy in terms of setting its research agenda and teaching curriculum. When America was setting up new universities in late 19th century, where did it turn to for inspiration? Not Britain, the mother country, but Germany and the Humboldtian university model. A great example of this is Johns Hopkins University. Its first president, Daniel C. Gilman, even extended the Humboldtian model, I suggest, prioritizing research over teaching, thereby institutionalizing a new genre of university, namely the research university. Now, as we can see, the idea of a university evolved over time, but it evolved mainly within a Western context. The question that naturally arises is whether there is an Eastern conception of a university. Uh, the best example is perhaps the one put forward by Rabindranath Tagore, Nobel laureate, poet extraordinaire, and a hugely underappreciated educationalist. Tagore suffered from the anglicized, exam oriented education system that had taken roots in the country by the time he was progressing through his primary and secondary education. He actually dropped out of school and was largely homeschooled by private tutors. After receiving his Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913, he felt the need to provide an alternate higher learning experience to the young generation. Tagore established Vishwa Bharati in 1921. The name Vishwa Bharati implies the communion of the world, Visva, with India, Bharati. Tagore felt that Eastern nations, India, China, Japan, and others, had lot to offer to the rest of the world. They need not be passive recipient of Western knowledge. They can be equal partners in the creation of a global knowledge base. His vision inspired many scholars across the globe who flocked to Shantiniketan, a sleepy town around 100 kilometers from Calcutta, the epicenter of British India. It was a magnificent vision that partially materialized for a short while, but ultimately it was a failure. Uh, After Tagore's death, Viswabharati was incorporated within the anglicized university system that he railed against. In fact, Vishwabharati became the first central university of India. Majority of universities in India are state university, provincial universities. Very few are central universities, and Vishwabharati was the first one. Um, but Tagore is not the key actor in my paper. If he was, I would have titled it Challenging the Idea of a University. My paper is titled Negotiating the Idea of a University because the main protagonist, Ashutosh Mukherjee, unlike Tagore, was an insider of the anglicized higher education system. In my book, A History of the Indian University System, I specified four different university subspecies: teaching university, Humboldtian university, research university, and examining university. Now, I have already talked about three of these subspecies: teaching, Humboldtian, and research. So let me explain what the examining university is all about. A university that only examines and not teaches students may sound like an oddity, but in fact, such universities are not that rare. The examining university model has a special significance in relation to India, as the university system in the country was established on that basis. The examining university originated with the establishment of University of London in 1836. The university was designed as an examination body to examine students of its affiliated colleges, University College London and King's College London. University of London was an outcome of a compromise, as UCL, University College London, was considered godless, quote unquote, institution because of its secular nature. The orthodoxy of the time prevented it from obtaining the university charter from the crown directly, and uh, and hence University of London was set up as a purely examining body to assess the students of UCL and King's. The compromise became the preferred model when the British set up the university system in India in 1857. The main strength of the examining university is that it is cheap to run and administer. And no doubt this was what attracted the colonial administration in India and made them to adopt it enthusiastically. Over time, universities in India have gradually moved away from the examining university form, incorporating teaching and to a lesser extent research within its ambit, but there is still a large imprint of the founding model in university affairs. Undergraduate studies are still undertaken largely in affiliated colleges, and research activities are very limited in nature. The system remains, in the main, examination oriented. It is clear that the examining university serves only a limited purpose, and with the passing of the colonial era, its raison d'etre diminished rapidly. The original examining university, University of London, incorporated teaching within its scope in 1958, and one is hard pressed to find examples of universities as pure examining bodies in the 21st century. But a teaching university can often be an examining university in spirit. This paper explores the first shift that happened within the Indian university system to change it from its pure examination orientation to postgraduate teaching and research. The university the University of Calcutta faithfully followed the University of London examination model from its inception in 1857 until 1908, doing little else other than examining students who were taught at affiliated colleges. Why did the colonial government felt the examining university model best suited for India? Uh, I'll come back to this when there was the shift happened after 1906. Um, so why did the colonial government felt the examining university best suited for India? The civil service in India was a hierarchy consisting at the top of a few covenanted civil servants who were almost exclusively European throughout the 19th century, who had long term contracts and were paid handsomely, and a large number of native, uncovenanted civil servants at the bottom who were paid meagerly. Uh, there was thence a division of labor between universities in Britain and India in relation to training of civil servants in India. The ones in Britain educated the top civil servants who wielded tremendous power, being less of civil servants as we know of them today and more akin to powerful proconsuls. The ones in India, the University of Calcutta being most prominent of them, examined and produced graduates who populated the uncovenanted civil service, and other public services, including the judiciary. The university system had been established in part to provide human capital for the lower levels of colonial bureaucracy, and it was performing this role adequately by examining and screening the multitude that were hopeful of gaining government employment. Through reforms that the government implemented in 1882, it was successful in attracting natives to set up private colleges that were essentially training centers for students to pass the university exam. But within within couple of decades, these native-run private colleges became the hotbed for nationalist movements in the country, so much so that the government tried to curb the growth of these colleges through the University Act of 1904, which made the conditions of being affiliated much more stringent. But in the Act, there was a provision of making universities more university like in the sense that they should also undertake teaching and research. So that provision was there, but the administration did not take any action on that provision up until Ashutosh Mukherjee came into the scene. The viceroys in India were also the chancellors of the Indian university. At that time, there were only three university: Calcutta University, Bombay University, and Madras University. So they automatically became the chancellors of the universities. Typically educated either in Oxford or in Cambridge, these chancellors had a very specific ideal of higher education, which was based on classics, history, and philosophy. A great example. So there was this duality of colonial attitude towards native higher education. These chancellors often, they had pretentious rhetoric about higher education, but in reality, in practice, they did not open their purse and spend money on higher education. They wanted to run the higher education on the cheap. So this duality characterized the colonial higher education system in India up until again Mukherjee came into the scene. Great example of the rhetoric is it can be found in Curzon's convocation address. Curzon, who was the viceroy of British India between 1899 and 1904. So in his convocation address as the chancellor of Calcutta University, he said this: a residential and teaching university such as Oxford or Cambridge, with its venerable buildings, its historic associations, the crowded and healthy competition of its life, its youthful friendships, its virile influence upon character, its spirit de corps, cannot either in Britain or in any country be fairly compared with an examining and degree given university such as yours. They are alike in bearing the same name, but they are profoundly unlike in the influence that they exert upon pupil and in the degree to which they affect not so much his profession as his character and life. It's kind of reflecting Newman's idea of a university. Um, Ashutosh Mukherjee became the vice chancellor of Calcutta uh, University on 6th of March 1906, and thus began one of the longest tenures of vice chancellorship in the history of university. Um, Mukherjee, in fact, acted as the vice chancellor in two separate time periods. First, from 1906 till 1914, the second, the time in which he effected most of his educational innovation, and the second from 1921 to 1923. He was the first native vice chancellor of the university. The chancellors and the vice chancellors of the university in the pre Mukherjee period were in a cozy consensus. They occasionally preached the high ideals of higher education, but did little to change the status quo. Mukherjee was the first chancellor to challenge the government to fulfill its role and achieve its true potential. The conflict between the vice chancellors, whose primary motive had to be the betterment of the university, and chancellors, representing the government who wanted to run a bare-bone university system, was always there. This tension between chancellors and vice chancellor was always there, but never became explicit until the arrival of Mukherjee into the scene. Faced with increasing demand for resources from the university, the rhetoric from government also changed, and their attitude became openly adversarial. So gone were the days where they were preaching about Oxford and Cambridge, and they said that we are not going to give any money. The university has to be self sufficient in terms of funding. Mukherjee's educational innovations were on three fronts. First, he made a serious attempt to convert the university into a teaching body from a pure examination oriented entity. Second, he created an environment in which it was possible for staff to engage in original research. And third, as government funds were not forthcoming for the first two initiatives, he engaged on an unprecedented scale in fundraising activities for the university. So he took the colonial rulers at their word. They said universities are supposed to be place for learning and not for rote learning and examination, and then said yes. So he said when he became the chancellor, let's go for it. And universities should produce original knowledge. Scientific knowledge is essential for development of the nation and its people. And his idea was that because government was not forthcoming, the colonial government was not forthcoming in terms of providing funds. He said that his strategy was to get rich natives to step up and fund the initiative, the first initiatives, with the hope that the state would then buy into the project and provide additional funds, which actually never came true, that hope. The state never delivered the funds. Um, so these were Ashuto's innovation. I've already talked about it. Um, what about its legacy? Um, as an example of this two, as an example of his fundraising capacity, uh, endowments from two natives, Taraknath Palit and Rashberi Ghosh, amounted to rupees 2.5 millions, worth about 617 million pound in today's money. Armed with this resource, Mukherjee laid the foundation of University College of Science in March 1914. Um, Mukherjee undoubtedly shifted the Indian university system onto a new paradigm through the establishment of University College of Science and Technology, a part of Calcutta University. The country's university system, for the first time, incorporated research as one of its key roles. C.V. Raman, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930, was the first professor in University College of Science and Technology. Many key figures of Indian science, Meghnad Saha and Satyendranath Bose, who collaborated with Einstein, being the prominent examples, were students of UCST, University College of Science and Technology. So The impact of Mukherjee's education innovations on the Indian university system was profound. Perhaps as an insider, he made a more lasting impact on the university system in the country than what Tagore achieved as an outsider, trying to institutionalize a radically different conception of higher learning in the country. By engaging with the colonial administration at their own game, Mukherjee made a lasting impact on the country's higher education landscape. That's it, really. So I'll stop sharing and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Soja. Now the room is open for questions and answers. Oh, right, okay. Oh,